Good morning. I could, of course, tell you about our nature and science publications, but today I have something much more important to share with you, and I anyway trust that you can read these papers. In the past, humans believed that life is a mystery we can't understand, that humans are a specifically created species, unlike all others, that matter and energy are unrelated, but also that the Earth is flat, that the Earth is in the center of the universe. All of this, of course, has changed because scientific instruments have allowed us to discover the world. They allow us to explore the universe and our Earth to understand them better. I have been raised at a time when most people believed that traffic jams are unavoidable, that crowd disasters are God-given or caused by panic, by aggressive behavior, that stock markets crash due to black swans, that only lazy people are unemployed, that cultural progress is due to wars, that revolutions are caused by Twitter, and that social order can only be created by top-down control. All this is wrong. The problems we haven't solved yet, however, relate primarily to systemic instabilities, and this is what is hard to understand for most people, but easy to understand for physicists. That means you can make a major contribution to a better world. Crowd disasters, in fact, happen when the interactions between pedestrians get uncontrolled, when the density is too high. Phantom traffic jams are a result of delayed speed and distance adaptation. And similarly are booms and recessions a result of delayed adaptation of network flows. The flash crash on May 6, 2010 shows also that our financial system is highly unstable. And moreover, we have learned that too much connectivity in our globalized system can undermine cooperation. We're seeing that crime and unemployment are related. We can understand the occurrence of conflict and its spreading. We can understand why and under what conditions revolutions happen. It turns out actually economic progress is a major variable in this. All these insights have become possible thanks to the availability of new data sources. Data are at the heart of scientific progress. Since a long time, X-rays help us to reveal what is wrong. That means problems and allow us to fix it. Actually, probably billions of people have benefited from this kind of technology. But now we can reveal the reasons for success or failure in our society with the availability of new data. And so we should be a little bit imaginative. Can we soon perhaps know everything? Now, given all the data that secret services, for example, are collecting, and could we use this to build something like a crystal ball that allows us to know what's happening in the world in any place, right now, or even predict the future? If we had such a system, could we decide and act like the wise king? We just had enough data. Could we fix all problems in the world? This is a question we need to ask if we want to understand what's actually going on at the moment, what governments are doing. If we wanted to do this, we would also need to be able to manipulate people's choices. And in fact, that becomes possible now by personalized information. If you do a Google search, if you use the web in any way, you get personalized information. So we are already being manipulated. And in fact, there is an economic activity that's focused actually on how state can influence people's choices. It's called nudging. And some people are concerned, some people see it as the solution of the problems that we have. But why then are people like Elon Musk so concerned about artificial intelligence? And not just he. Bill Gates too, Stephen Hawking too. So we need to think about what might be happening. Do, for example, Skynet-like systems exist, or could they exist? And in fact, just a few days ago, we could read about an activity that Baidu, the biggest search engine of China, is starting. They're trying to team up with the military in order to come up with kind of a super artificial intelligence. And that would basically use all the data of all your search requests and all the activities on the internet in order to simulate the world. But then the question is, what kind of conclusion would such a superintelligence in the future, in 10 years' time, draw? And one problem we need to be aware of is, of course, unsustainability. We're using too many resources in the world. Now, what would be the conclusions? What if this superintelligence that governments would listen to come to the conclusion that there are just too many people in the world? Also, the digital revolution is not just fixing problems, we're actually running into new kinds of problems. So, in about 10 years' time, we expect that computers would reach brain power. And there's some people, I'm not so sure about this actually, but some people are seeing that we would have computer power one day in this century that would be as powerful as all human brains. I mean, maybe you don't take this seriously, but we need to think about the technological revolution anyway, because we are already seeing a massive loss of jobs. And the projections of those in the Silicon Valley who know is that 40% of today's top 500 companies will be gone in 10 years. And it's something that will also influence your personal jobs and your personal lives. So I think our economy in the next 20 years will change dramatically, and our societal institutions too. Now, one concern that I have is that powerful tools, if you could build them, would also produce big mistakes, because no technology is perfect, and once there is a mistake, it would be really a serious mistake. And also powerful tools attract, of course, serious misuse by criminals, by terrorists, by extremists. So we need to be concerned about this, and in particular, because we've seen that data are not safe. I mean, at the World Economic Forum, somebody said their companies will have been hacked, and there are other companies that don't know yet. And in fact, cost of cybercrime now has skyrocketed to $3 trillion per year, and there's an exponential increase of these costs. Now, the other point is, if we take decisions for the entire world, or for large areas of the world, if we take the wrong decisions, then it could have really serious impacts. Like, look at the unemployment, how it changed in the Eurozone as compared to the United States. It hasn't been working out so well for Europe. And one of the problems that's really unsolved is what goal function to take. What do we optimize? If we optimize the wrong thing, it might be disastrous for us. And in fact, therefore, I think we shouldn't take decisions for the entire world. We should really build on diversity. And in fact, there is a nice paper by Hidalgo, Barabashi, and Hausmann that shows that diversity is really key for success of economies. And the same thing, of course, applies actually to innovation. So we've been looking into the places that have actually come up with ideas and those that consume them. It turns out that it's democracies, it's the places where there's a freedom of thought that is actually producing new ideas. So we couldn't run the entire world like Singapore. Singapore is really an impressive state, I don't want to say anything bad about it, but in principle, there's a lot of flow of ideas that comes from elsewhere, and I think we don't have enough innovation right now. Moreover, there are reasons why the power of these machines would be limited. So let's look at these curves over here. Processing power increases exponentially, doubles every 18 months, blue curve. Data volume, however, increases even more quickly, every 12 months. So that leads us from a situation where we didn't have enough data to take the decisions to a situation where we can now take evidence-based decisions with big data. But see the gap that is opening up between these two curves. It's becoming bigger and bigger. That means there's something like dark data that we would never be able to process. And that creates something like a flashlight effect. We would be focused on certain things and overlook other things that are important. And for example, while we were focused on the aftermath of September 11 and fighting terrorism, we didn't see the financial crisis coming. While we were focusing on this, we didn't see the Arab Spring coming. And while focused on these problems, in Syria, we didn't see the crisis in Ukraine coming. And similarly, have we responded to Ebola really late. So big data is not necessarily solving all our problems. And moreover, look at the red curve over here. Systemic complexity is increasing even faster as we network the world. And that leads to a situation where not even all the data in the world would be enough to control and optimize the world in real time. So there would be a loss of top-down control. And if you don't believe it, actually, here's the best example. Right in Berlin, the airport. And just learned actually that they tried to fix several years this fire safety system. It should have been a centralized system, but now finally they learned they will have to decentralize it. So this is exactly my message. We need to have a different approach. We need a new approach that is consistent with freedom and democracy, which is distributed systems and self-organization, and that's where physicists, in particular complexity scientists, are really important. Because swarm intelligence has been really impressing people, and we know it, of course, from beehives, for example. The interesting point is, it's a well-ordered system. There's nobody who tells all the bees what to do. There is a queen bee, but the queen bee just lays eggs. It doesn't hand out commands or so there's a system of self-organization. In fact, this has inspired people like Adam Smith, and that's why we're talking about the principle of the invisible hand. There's nothing else than self-organization. Unfortunately, the invisible hand doesn't always work. If it works, it's very efficient, but sometimes it fails terribly, as pollution shows, or climate change, or overfishing, and all the other tragedies of the commons. But now, 300 years after its invention, we can finally make the invisible hand work. So there is a technological revolution that allows us to build self-organizing system with the Internet of Things, sensor networks. So there are now more sensors actually in the world than people. And in about 10 years, there will be 10 times as many sensors than people. So this will allow us to measure the world in real time. But what to do with these data? Should we collect them all in one place and save them forever? I don't think so. I think we can learn actually from the scientific measurement approach that has been developed at CERN. CERN is the biggest big data infrastructure that is civic. And they're throwing away 99.9% of their measurement data immediately because they could never process them. They're just keeping those data that they need to decide a certain experiment, to verify or falsify a certain hypothesis. So this is a smart data approach. You just keep what you need. You throw away most of the data. And I think we are now entering actually a golden age of complexity science. The problem in the past was that we had to stay theoretical because we didn't have the data. Now all this data that we need to build self-organizing systems are becoming available. We just need to combine the Internet of Things with complexity science and come up with the right kind of feedback loops in order to support self-organization. Well, the question, of course, is what would be the right kind of feedback loops? What would be the right kind of interaction mechanism? That's a matter of interaction design or mechanism design or systems design. And such things can be tested in computer simulations or virtual worlds, even serious games. But we can also learn a lot actually from all the cultures in the world, because cultures are a set of rules how to solve certain kind of problems. So if we would learn to formalize all these success principles, we could combine them in new ways. So what I'm trying to say is, we can use the hidden forces behind self-organization in the world around us to our own advantage. It's like in Asian martial art. And we can learn to let these forces work for us. As we've learned to turn explosions into directed motion and to build all sorts of other devices, we'll be able to use the forces behind our society and economy. Now let's start with technological applications. So we've shown in the past that congestion can be overcome. Yeah, at the moment you see here a simulation of the annoying stop-and-go traffic that we know. But then later on in this video, we'll turn on a driver assistance system that will dissolve these annoying stop-and-go waves. So in order to see what's the reason for this problem, we have to look from above, and it turns out that there is an on-ramp, and through this on-ramp, a couple of vehicles are trying to join the freeway. That produces small perturbations. These perturbations are amplified and cause stop-and-go traffic. Now assume the cars are equipped with radar sensors that measure the distances and relative velocities, and we would use that for automatic driving. And in fact, that allows us to dissolve these traffic jams. So we've changed the interaction mechanism, and in this way we've solved the problem. We can come up with similar approaches actually for urban traffic flow. And we've compared three different approaches, like the centralized top-down control. This benevolent dictator, a wise king, that would try to take the best decisions for all traffic lights and for all drivers in town. And then in the middle, there is a different approach, which is based on local optimization. Here, each intersection, we're trying to strictly minimize travel times of the approaching vehicles. Like a Homo economicus would do it. Just do the best for yourself. And then there's a third approach which does the same thing but interrupts the optimization if queues grow large, and then the queues would first be cleared. Now, the top-down regulation delivers the red line. Yeah, so as the capacity utilization of the intersection goes up, queue lengths go up too. And we wouldn't expect anything else. But it does a reasonable job. However, it turns out that the selfish optimization, based on the Homo economicus principle, is much better, much shorter queue length, much more efficient. So there is an invisible hand kind of coordination of traffic flows. But on the other hand, we see that here suddenly coordination breaks down, queue lengths explode, and that's where actually suddenly the centralized top-down control is better again. So Adam Smith's invisible hand fails when the system is really at high demand. Now the third approach, however, that's other regarding, of course, it takes care of not producing spillover effects. That is actually producing very efficient outcomes for the entire range of capacity utilization. So this is pretty impressive. What we can learn here that local interaction mechanism can do the job. They can allow the system to flexibly adapt, but we need to be other regard. We need to pay attention to externalities of the decisions and actions. And this allows to make the invisible hand work. So this has really dramatic improvements for public transport, for motorized traffic and pedestrian cyclists, and for our environment too, and see these beautifully coordinated greenways. Now the interesting point is the suitable feedback to measurements of external effects can make the invisible hand work in socioeconomic systems too. So I believe that we can also build assistance systems for cooperation, not just for cars. So the problem is that we need to overcome tragedies of the commons, for example, as they occur in social dilemma situations, where cooperation would be good for everyone, but it's unstable, unfortunately. So we need to find a mechanism that turns the downward spiral into an upward spiral. And what kind of mechanisms might be able to do that? What kind of feedbacks? Well, reputation mechanisms are one possible solution. They help to find suitable cooperation partners, and they actually reward quality. But there are mechanisms too, just mentioning one more. So merit-based matching is one of them. And the interesting point is, when you match more cooperative people or companies with more cooperative people or companies, and less cooperative people and companies with less cooperative people and companies, and this is not just rewarding cooperative behavior, it's also creating an unexpected trend to the better, towards more cooperation. And interestingly, who contributes more gains more. This is really amazing. But we could actually go a step further and build a system for interactions of all kinds. So if two people or two companies interact, then there could be actually 4 possible outcomes. It could be lose-lose situations, such as war, for example, in most cases. This is what you should really avoid. Then there could be win-lose situation. There are 2 kinds. One kind would be bad altogether, one kind would be good altogether. So in the bad case, we need to exploit the one who would we need to protect the one who would lose from exploitation. In the good win-lose situation, we can actually turn it into a win-win situation by value transfer. And in the win-win case, we might decide to improve fairness. So we can build, if we just had enough information about ourselves and our interaction, we could build assistance systems to help us in these kind of situations. And I believe that we should also build systems that support collective intelligence, generalization of strong intelligence. Because, just to talk about a physical analogy, a huge antenna is not as powerful as an array of many small antennas. And so it's very important that we really utilize the many good ideas that we have and bring them together. And the question is, how to do that? Now, top-down decisions wouldn't do it. Majority decisions are better, but we need something even better than that. It turns out that we need to take on board even more minority ideas. In fact, there is an interesting example, Netflix challenge. That was about $1 million to improve the prediction of your taste of movies. It turned out that even though Netflix applied big data algorithms, they were not happy with the predictability. And so they said, whoever comes up with a 10% improvement gets $1 million. And there were hundreds of teams that signed up, thousands of solutions, and after 2 years, the problem wasn't solved. Until the leading team decided to go together with other teams that were not as good. And we think, okay, that would deteriorate the solution. But on the contrary, averaging over those solutions, the best solution and other solutions turn out to be even better than the best. That means diversity wins, not the best solution. But how would we get all the data that we need in the future for all of these applications to overcome the problems that we face? Well, we could actually support decision-making and awareness by building a planetary nervous system. And we could do that actually by building the Internet of Things as a citizen web. And all it takes is you and your smartphone, because we can connect all these smartphones to build a global measurement system. Every smartphone contains about 15 sensors. Luminosity, noise, whatever, position. And we can do a lot of things with these sensors. We could use that as a universal measurement tool. For example, these are acceleration data. And what could we do with them? We could detect, for example, earthquakes and warn our friends collectively. We would not have to interfere with your privacy, because the important thing here is a collective measurement. We would average over many smartphone measurements. So I think for such a system to work well, and in particular for a digital society to work well, we need to build information systems in a way that we can trust them. Trust is really essential for society to work well. The economic crisis was basically a crisis of trust. It cost us $14,000 billion. So trust is important. And that's why it's important that you can control the information flows. You could decide which sensors to open and which ones to close. Which sensors to use just for measurements for yourself, and which sensors to use to share data. And moreover, we think there should be a personal data store, a data mailbox, where basically all data that happen to be produced about yourself would be sent, and you could administer these data and say, well, my shopping data I'm happy to share with companies because I want to have personalized offers, but my medical data I would just share with my doctor, or my social data you would share with your friends, and maybe with everyone, so you could decide that. So why don't we do this together? Create a participatory system, as we've created Linux or Wikipedia or OpenStreetMap. Yes, in fact, we could create an open data source for everyone, a real-time data stream. It's not difficult, if you know how to program, you can do that with us. So we can produce our own open data. The principle would be taking and giving. So you can take data as you need, but for the system to work well, of course, you should give some data back. And the same thing with the measurement protocols. The way how we use these sensors. We could share this source code, so you could take it, you could modify it to come up with new measurement protocols. Think of a physical measurement even, or a social or economic measurement. And then give it back to everyone, so it could be modified, and altogether it would go into a powerful information innovation ecosystem. And with a micropayment system, everyone could establish then an own business, because that would become more and more powerful over time, and collaborate with others. So let's create new opportunities for everyone, because that's going to create better services, better products, better businesses, smarter cities and smarter societies. And it's already on its way actually. We have done experiments, and we have measured proximity at a large computer congress, and so more than 100 people were not GPS tracked, but we were looking at proximity to measure the social network. So the proof of concept is there. In next year, I will be showing you an operating proof of system. So what are we waiting for? Get ready team up with your friends and colleagues and join the NervoSnet community. And by the way, there are also PhD positions available. If you want to know more, there's a book just coming out, Thinking Ahead, so please ask questions. Thank you.